Everyone wants more money, but most of us weren't taught how to create an abundant life. That's where the More Money Show comes in. If you're ready to have more money, create more freedom, and experience more fun, turn the volume up. It's time to learn how to create the prosperity and life you have been dreaming of. Here's your host, Cassie Parks.
Hello, and welcome to this episode of the More Money Show. I am your host, Cassie Parks, and today I am actually joined by Michele Reynolds, who is going to be interviewing me, asking some of the questions that maybe you have had on your mind, because this is all part of the Year of Growth series, and I'm doing it too. So welcome, Michele. Thank you for turning the tables and interviewing me today.
No problem. Well, I just want to thank you for being here and showing up like you always do. But I want to thank all of our listeners because the comments and the feedback that I see on posts are just incredible. So you're doing some good work out there, Cassie. So
awesome.
Let's start with the question that comes to mind right away is tell me what's new and exciting in your world, because that's what you always ask me.
Yeah. So much. I love, let's see, what's new and exciting is that I'm about to release my second novella, which is so crazy. By the time this comes out, it's actually will be out. It's so fun and exciting. Because something happened, I remember because you helped me get the graphic design stuff and I think most people know, but maybe not, you're my VA. And so, I said, okay, well, now I have a series of books. I need the mark, for the series. And so you sent it off to the graphic designer and she sent it back and it was gorgeous. And there was this moment when I opened it and I was like, oh, I have a series now, right? I don't just write one book. It wasn't one off because I have one, obviously there's already one, there's a second one, and I'm writing the third one. And so that for me is really exciting that's, it was exciting when it was one, and it's even more exciting now that it's like, that's part of what I do.
Yeah, absolutely. It was fun to watch that come to be too, to be, part of a series. But for people who don't know about your first novella, can you tell us about the first novella and then the second novella? And then what's the name of the series?
Absolutely. So the first novella is called Choose Me. There's a couple books by that. So you can obviously look for my name on Amazon, or you can look for the girl who's laying in the grass with her blue tennis shoes, right? Because shoes ties into what I do, right? And it's about Melanie Jenkins, who is like, she just got promoted, but her love life kind of falls apart, and she has a sidekick named Dottie who helps her figure out how to get back to love. And so it's a fun read. I love it. I wanted to write stories that had an impact, that taught or made people think, and so the feedback I got from that was amazing, and I loved that. The second book is called Own It, where you actually see, technically, in timeline order, it actually happens before Choose Me. There's a character named Ellie who shows up in Choose Me, and she helps the main character, Melanie, see what she's missing along the way and help her fill in the gaps of what she needs to do to move her life forward. And in this book, you actually get to see Ellie beforehand, and you get to see Dottie beforehand, and you get to see what they had to go through to become who they were in Choose Me. So that was a lot of fun.
That's cool. Why did you choose to do it that way, where you did Choose Me and then Own It afterwards? Why did you do it that way?
I don't know that I actually made that choice up front. I didn't make the choice up front. I'll tell you that. I followed the story. So when, I got if you haven't heard before, I was in a pool, infinity pool in Tuscany in the middle of a vineyard, overlooking the Mediterranean, when the idea for Choose Me came to me. And so I just wrote the story. I said, I'm going to write the story, and I did it. And then as I was going on to the next one, I knew the lesson, I knew the example that I wanted the book. And I just asked, whose story is this? Right. And the answer I got was that it was Ellie's. And so that meant that we had to go back in time and do the prequel. Which turned out to be really fun, because not only do you get to see Ellie back in time, but you get to see Dottie, and you get to see part of her not being as strong as she is in Choose Me, which I think is cool, because that's life, right? People are strong and show up in certain ways and can help us, but it's because they've been through something.
Yeah, that's really cool. I love that. I'm like, I love, but you said Tuscany, Mediterranean, infinity pool. Is that when you realized you wanted to be an author, or did you realize that before Tuscany?
After I think I remembered it in Tuscany, I think that I had inklings of wanting to be an author when I was in first or second grade, but I don't think that, my stories were, I don't know. I'm not going to say like some teacher like put them down, but I don't think it was encouraged, or I didn't know that was a real option. I never studied like literature or anything else. But when I was in Tuscany, I was writing Double Your Business, and a friend of mine was actually writing a fiction book. It was her, she had been writing fiction for years, but not with the intent of publishing it. She'd been working on stories for years. And so she had this story that she came there to write. And I was like, it just reminded me, that that's what I wanted to do. And then the story just came, the story that I wanted to tell. And so whether it was remembering or deciding, it happened in that moment.
That's cool. And I'd never even heard the word novella before you told it to me. I was like, what is that? What is a novella?
I hadn't heard it either until my friend was writing hers. And I'm like, what does that mean? She's like, it just means short novel. And so if you like Google it, I think it's a novel under 40,000 or no. Cause mine are about 40,000.
Okay.
So I think it's under 100,000 maybe.
That's cool. Yeah. I was like, novella. It just sounds so like, I'm like, where have I been all my life?
I know, right? I know.
Yeah. So was there anything you had to grow into in becoming an author? I mean, we knew you're a coach as well, but we're going to talk about that in a second. But was there anything you had to grow into to becoming a multiple time author? Woohoo!
Absolutely. So, there was growing that took place in each of my nonfiction books. And like, I had to grow into that next bigger version of myself. I had to grow into the person who owned that knowledge and who owned fully that I was the person, who was talking about the things in my book. And so there's this level of ownership that you grow into when you write a nonfiction book. And that same thing happens when I wrote a fiction book. It was different though, right? So, there's more trust, I think, that goes into a fiction book, because you have to trust the story, or at least in my process, you have to trust where the story's going. Like when I write a nonfiction book, I know like there's the outline, here's the examples, like everything is done before. But Choose Me actually ended up, Ellie wasn't originally a character in Choose Me, but Melanie needed her. And so I was like, okay, well, how does she find her? How does she show up in her life? Right. So I had to grow into that person that trusts the story, which having taken improv and performed improv, that was super helpful in that endeavor. But I definitely had to grow and own that I could be a fiction author, and like people were going to read this story, which was different. Right. So it's one thing when there's like knowledge I'm sharing, like I knew I was good. Like I got it. I'm a money manifesting coach. Like I know that, I own that. When I write those things, I know for sure they're true, and I know they're going to resonate with my ideal reader. I know all those things. And fiction is a little bit different, because it's more, it's story. There's no facts to go back to. There's no, concrete examples. You have to make it flow. And so it's just a little bit different experience.
It sounds like such a fun process, and it sounds very similar to what you coach on, like trust the process, trust the story, like lean into your future self, grow bigger. I'm like, boy, all that sounds really familiar.
Doesn't it?
Yep.
It is all, really familiar, and it is a lot it's all what I teach. And so I could bring all of those things to the table when I decided I was going to become a fiction author, or step into that version of my future self. Because when I decided, she automatically became part of my future self. Right.
Yeah.
And so yeah, like trusting the process, like having practiced that both as a coach, as somebody who I practice what I preach all the time. So having done that over and over again made it easier to trust this process of, okay, fiction, it's different, all of those things. And yeah, so everything that I coach played into being able to do this.
So you kind of just answered it, but I just wanted to see if there's anything additional, like being an author and being a coach, like how do those tie together in, not only your lessons, your learning, because you had to, do what you teach, but is there any other parallels that you see?
But yeah, between being a coach and being an author, absolutely. So I think that, being the coach that I am and doing what I do, it's even more important that I follow the path of, okay, like, yeah, fiction. I also write fiction. I also do this, because what I've found is that when you give yourself the space, so sort of first level of what I coach is it's money manifesting, but it's really changing how you view money and how you view abundance and what is possible in your life. Like, that's really what we're doing in that first level of, people come into my world. The first thing we do in the Enchanted Circle is manifest 10K, because you need that foundation. And so, yeah, that is about attracting money, and it's about manifesting money, but it's also about laying the foundation that what you want is possible, right? So when
Absolutely.
I get you to see, okay, yeah, I can invite $10,000 in my life, like, your possibilities open up, right? And then the next level is really stepping into your future self. Like, how do I get in touch with the person who really does have everything I've ever wanted, and is not just has it, but is enjoying it, is living it every day, right? And when you see that and you start to become that future self, you see life different, you live life different. And what happens, what I've learned on my own journey, because I'm just ahead of everybody, right? Like,
Yeah.
um, is that those things open up. So those whispers, those visions, those things that you remember, however they show up or however you title them, like, hey, I want to write this fiction book, show up because there's space in your life for that to show up, because there's enough core belief that whatever you want is possible, that you can do it because you've built that, shows up. So as a coach, for me especially, like, I can't say no to that, because I have to be the example. I am the example, right? And so that's how it also, goes with coaching. And that's why I do it for me, and I also do it for my clients, because I want to continue to be the example of, okay, when you step into this version of what's possible, like, and you see what else is possible, like, go for that. Don't stop.
Yeah. And that's one of the things I love about you. Look, I'm taking notes because because I always learn stuff with you. And part of the reason that I've chosen you as my coach, because there have been other people that have coached me in the past. But the reason I stay working with you is because A, I love you, and B, you do what you say, you do what you coach. And that congruence is very attractive to me. And so to watch you lean into your future self all the time, like, just takes me going, okay, what are you doing, Michele? So I love that. So thank you for your example.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And I love you too.
Thank you. What advice? There's probably other people out there that are saying, I want to write a book too. I want to be like Cassie. I want to do fiction and nonfiction. What advice would you give them? Where do they start?
Oh man. I think you need a book coach. I think you need somebody, whether that's an editor that can support that. And you can always get in touch with Maggie McReynolds, who's somebody that, you guys hear on interviews, like, you can always go to her. But get somebody who can give you that eye, because the thing is, everybody wants to write a book. Like, I think, I can't remember what the stats are, but it's something like 90% of people, that might be a little bit high, have said they want to write a book, right? And so you just, like everything else in my work, you got to get clear first. Do you want to write a book for you, or do you want to write a book that changes lives?
Mm-hmm.
And either answer is awesome, but you have to know what you're doing. If this book is just cathartic for you, awesome, just go write it. Just go do it, right? Step right into it. If this book, you want it to change lives, you want someone else's eyes on it. You want somebody else to direct you how to write the book that can impact other people. So even with Choose Me as a fiction book, I wrote who is the woman reading this, and I imagine this 35-year-old woman who has been struggling to let go of a relationship because she's been judging herself, and she's just been saying things to herself and judging that she still feels this way. She should have been over it by now. So she's judging, and I saw her, and I wanted her to see, like, why reading this book at the end is like, oh, I get to choose. I get to choose to live the life that I want. I don't have to, I can hurt from this relationship, but I also get to see how it made me grow, and I get to move forward in that. And so if you want to write a book that impacts others, whether you're writing fiction or nonfiction, you have to meet them where they are. You have to either tell the story, or you have to write how they are. And I learned that you can go grab The Difference Process on Amazon by Angela Loria and learn that. Or you can find somebody who knows how to do that, who knows how to sort of step in and say, hey, you're writing this part for you, not for your person.
Mhm.
So get somebody else's eyes on it if you do want it to make an impact, and just get started.
That's a great advice. Did you, when you were writing your first novella and now your second novella, did you write to a specific audience? Like, did you have them in mind as you were writing it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I had one person. I don't remember what her name was at this moment. I'd have to look it up. But I had one, she's fictional. She's not in my life. She's just the person that I imagine out there that's going to like pick up the book and it's going to have a big impact on her.
Nice.
And yeah. And so as I wrote it, I thought about at the end of each chapter, how do I want her to feel? Like, what do I want her to see about her life? Things like that.
That's so cool. That's and that could probably be a million different people that pick up that book, but you wrote it to one. That's really cool.
Yeah. Well, when you write it to one, I explain it like this is, and I talk about this if anyone wants more info on it in my book, Marketing to Serve. But, it's kind of like if you go into a party, let's say there's like 20 people at a party, right? If you go in and you try and get everybody's attention and you start shouting, right? Because you want to talk to everybody at once. No one's going to hear you and everybody's going to keep doing what they're doing, right? But if you walk up to one person or two people and you start a conversation, everybody's had this experience. All of a sudden, the third person, the fourth person, the
Mhm.
fifth person, before you know it, it is a 10 people are listening and having this conversation. So when you write to one person instead of try to write to everybody, then you can be heard
Mm.
by a lot of people.
Versus being the idiot in the room who's yelling.
Yes.
Like such a
Right?
great way. Like I so pictured that and I'm like, oh yeah, I've done both of those
Right?
situations and
Yeah.
I'm that person too, right?
Yeah. Because we're just trying to go in and we're trying to get everybody's attention because we think, and this is something that we just talked about. How does coaching and this overlap, right? Often we think more is more, less is actually more, right? So when we talk to one person, we reach more people. When we don't explain ourselves, and money coaching, we talk about this as foundational. When you use less words, simply state what you want, you actually get more of what you want.
Yeah.
And so that's another area where that crosses over.
I just learned that recently through a workshop with you, and that I had to learn to ask for what I want. And it wasn't more words. It was being crystal clear. So
Yes.
yeah. So
Oh, I love that you shared that. And that is what it's about, right? Yeah.
right. I was like, oh, I just like everything's tying together. I love this so much. Where do people get Choose Me, your first novella, and where will they get Own It, your second novella?
Yeah. So all of them will be on Amazon.
Okay.
And soon you will also be able to get the paperback copy of Choose Me, because I know like sometimes you want a book for the beach, right? So we're doing them all. They'll all be available in paperback going forward, probably on the same day that they are for your Kindle. So whichever way you prefer, Michele is helping out with that. So thank you.
You're welcome.
But just go to Amazon. You can type in Cassie Parks. You can type in Choose Me. There's a couple titles. There's a couple books with the title Choose Me, but you can find mine pretty easily.
I always just go there and type your name, and
Yep.
all of your books come up, fiction and nonfiction. It's my favorite thing.
Yeah, it's the easiest way to do it, right?
Yeah, I'm just a raving fan. I'm like, woo. So, okay. So, I don't think we answered this question
Yeah.
earlier. I think I asked it, but I think we got skipped. What's the name of the series?
Oh, yes, we did. It's called the City Girl series.
The City Girl series. Where did you come up with that?
Oh, well, so most of the books, it's a little bit to be determined, the location in the third one, but they're all connected to Denver in some way, which is, as you know, is where I love. It's not currently where I reside, but it's always in my heart, right? A balcony in Denver and walking around the streets are what I love. And I owned property all over Denver. And so, and really my move to the city was huge in my growth process. It was something that, back, let's see, 7 years ago, it's 2018, 7, 8, 10 years ago, I couldn't even see that I wanted to be in the city. Like people would talk about it and I'd be like, oh, that's silly. Like spaces are so small, right? I had that negative, like that's stupid kind of. I didn't say that's stupid, but that was like, that's silly, right?
Just wasn't in your life.
It wasn't in my life. And I wasn't even at a place where I was, good enough isn't the right word, but the right word isn't coming. I wasn't even in the place where I could figure out what I wanted. Like I had so many other voices in my head. And so through, an exercise that a different coach gave me, I ended up staying downtown. I worked downtown, ended up staying downtown and doing some things after work. And a friend of mine was like, I guess I said to her one time, I said something like, I love this. And it was like a summer day and we're walking down the 16th Street Mall. She's like, you say that every time we're down here, right? And I'm like, oh, there's a clue.
Yeah.
There's a clue about what would change the happiness level in my life, right?
I just got chills.
Yay. Yeah. So that probably is what started me. And then once I was open to it, like the path just started opening up for me to move downtown, and it made me happier on so many levels, right? It eliminated my hour commute and gave me a 15-minute walk. It allowed me this outdoor space I didn't have to take care of, but I could enjoy among, being downtown. And I loved it. And it's really where my heart started to thrive. And I started to become at a rapid pace a different person, the person that I am right now. And so it just made sense to honor that part of the journey by naming the series the City Girl Journey.
I love it.
Series.
Wasn't it when you lived downtown that you quit your corporate job and you became a full-time entrepreneur? Isn't that where that happened?
That is where that happened. Absolutely.
That was like such a pivotal day. I remember very clearly.
It was awesome.
Yeah.
I lived downtown a couple of years at that point, and definitely like being down there gave me more energy. Partly, it gave me literally time back, which gave me more energy to, do what I wanted to do. But it also, like, the energy and that vibration and being in the space where my heart sang made all that happen faster, for sure.
Yeah.
Once I realized that was what's going to happen when I was there.
I love it. Environment. Love it. What plans do you have for more books? Because I've got two I'm super excited about taking the beach to the beach with me. What about 3, 4, 5, 10? You got any more coming?
Yeah. So number 3 is called The Plan.
Okay.
As soon as Own It comes out, you'll be able to pre-order The Plan. So you can pre-order it and get it so that it's on your Kindle right away as soon as it's available. Okay. And that's different. It's taking me as an author to a new level. I woke up one morning and literally the story hit me, all of it. And I sat down to write the first, I wrote the first, 2,000 words in like 45 minutes or something. And yeah, it just like flowed. And it's a different style, which I'm excited about because I love to grow. And I think when we, so often this has been on my mind is the difference between growing, like going wide and going deep. Right. And I first learned this from a friend who learned it from a urban planner, but because often they plan urban areas like they go wide, right? We use this space over here in this space, but what she had told her is you need to go deep. You need to use the same space. You need to create a space that can do more than one thing. And in terms of growth, often we think, oh, I need to go seek all these things. I need to spread out and get all of these levels, where really what I've learned is if you just go deeper, you get more. So by continuing to writing, when it comes, this example we're talking about being a fiction author, exploring other ways to write versus the way that Own It and Choose Me were written, is what's happening in this third book. It's a 2-person perspective, which I love, because you're seeing 2 stories happen and then you get to see what happens in them both and how they connect, right? So that's super fun. I'm excited about that. Yay. Different than I've ever written. Definitely putting pushing my comfort zone, which I love about, what I write, and really truly pushing me as well to trust, even on a deeper level, the story.
Mm-hmm.
And the characters, which I love, because I love that part. I love stepping into a character and going, okay, what happens now? What is she feeling now? What is she thinking now? Because it's not my thoughts. And this is very far, there's not even any threads of me in this, which is fun.
That is fun. I'm like, I love that you I'm like, how do you come up with that? Like, you just trust so much. It's just, you're such a good example of what you teach. So I heard you say a couple things that I'm going to tie it into my next question. So stay with me here. So you said 3 things. You said you were at a point when you were going to move into the city that you were at a point where you couldn't even figure out what you wanted.
Mm-hmm.
You had too many voices.
Mm-hmm.
And you just said that when you go deep, you get more.
Mm-hmm.
So those 3 things sound like my path to the enchanted circle.
Oh.
So I would love for you to tell people that don't know what the enchanted circle is, what it is, and what do we do there? Because, and if you want, you're welcome to use my story of how I got there, because I desperately needed, I didn't know what I wanted. I had too many voices, and I tried to go wide instead of deep, for sure. That is my story.
Oh, I love that this is awesome. Yeah. So not knowing what we want that happens, right? And so, but if you can start with something that you want, and the thing that most people start with is that they want more money, right? Because we know on some level we want what that gives us. So it's a great place to start, because I can also teach you how to figure out what you want by going for more money. And then let me circle back. The Enchanted Circle is my group coaching program, which I love, which was created by whispers from my future self that I needed to change things up. And it was, again, another example of where I had to trust. Like, it didn't make a lot of sense when the idea hit me. There's a lot of factors and numbers you could look at that said it didn't make sense. And I had to trust that whisper. And then once I did, I could see, like, oh, why this is so good and why it's amazing. And then a lot of my clients will also tell you that that's partly their manifestation, that they wanted exactly this. They wanted this. And so the Enchanted Circle is a group coaching membership. You come in and you start changing your money story by taking Manifest 10K. You get coaching from me along the way. And as you're doing that, and you get to share with the group, and you get to show up, you get coaching both asking questions in the moment on a day-to-day basis that I answer, as well as you get to show up on Mondays and ask live if you want, and get coached through that, and get support through not just questions, but those rough patches where you want to stop, right? And then you move on to the Future Self workshop, and you get to take that after you've gone through Manifest 10K, and we've laid that foundation. You get to step into your future self, and you get to start scripting, and you get to learn how I script and the details, and how I get to draw out of you what you really want. As Michele said, like, I didn't know what I want. I get to draw that out on a whole deeper level, right? Mm-hmm. Because often when people ask us what we want, most people do go wide, and they start listing stuff. Okay, well, then I want this house, and I want this car, and I want this, and I don't want this. And they start listing the stuff because nobody asks us to go deeper most of the time, right? But what I do is I take that with your future self, and we go deeper into that experience. Cool, you want that house? What happens in that house? What happens in that room, in this room? And we can take that to a whole nother level and get you in touch with that, right? Which, once you start listening to what you want in your own voice, it quiets a lot of those other voices. So we do that, and then you get to stay around to keep going deeper. I teach based on depth. I don't teach based on content. So, one of my clients once asked, well, am I going to learn anything new in this other workshop? And I said, you've been learning the same thing for me for over a year, but when you grow, we can go deeper. We can make it happen deeper. We can explore it deeper. And that's where the true growth comes from. That's where you realize the things like, oh, I want to be a fiction author, and things like that. So thank you for sharing part of your journey, and for asking that question.
Thanks for taking me on that journey. So, is there anything else that you want to share with the listeners today?
Just if you're called to join the Enchanted Circle, you can go to cassieparks.com and it says Enchanted Circle, and definitely go to Amazon and grab Own It and pre-order the plan. If you love fiction, you're looking for a beach read, and you also want to be, for me, one of the other reasons that we didn't touch on as much about writing fiction is I learn through stories. Like I learn a lot when I learn through movies. I learn through watching and observing other people. And then it's easier sometimes for me to see what I was doing or how I was creating certain things. And so if you want a book that is fun to read, but also has that can push you to open, to grow into more possibilities, then definitely this series is for you.
I agree. And I think we all learn through stories because you said something a minute ago about a client asked you, well, am I going to learn anything else in this? And you said, well, when you grow, we can go deeper. And I think that always shows up in the form of a story, and it's usually our own story, right? So we have to see, look in from the outside what's happening in our life or what we want to have happen. And that's how we grow. So I think stories, it fits for me naturally that you'd be an author. Because one last question, does what you teach your clients, like the scripting and the process and the envisioning, does that tie into how you write?
Absolutely, I would say. So not it's not exactly the same, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think being able to step into that moment and look around and see okay, what is she looking at? What is she thinking? What's going on in her head? What's he doing? That for sure has made it easier to be a writer. I don't think if I hadn't coached, I want to coach and I hadn't scripted like I scripted myself, it would be a lot harder.
Mm-hmm.
I would probably still be able to do it, but it wouldn't be as easy and as natural for me.
Yeah. You wouldn't be able to do 2,000 words in 45 minutes?
Right.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Well, thank you for your amazing example. And as Cassie's, she's my coach, and she's also my client and dear friend, and so many things. There aren't even words to really describe our relationship. It's just awesome. I just really want to thank you for taking me as a person to the next level in life. And I know that you don't just do that for me, you do it for so many people. So thank you so much. And I hope you guys enjoyed our time today.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you for interviewing me, and thank you to all our listeners for being here today. Make sure to check out the next interview in the Year of Growth series.
Thank you for joining us on The More Money Show. To learn the step-by-step process to welcome more money into your life, go to manifest10k.com.